All right, good evening. This is the March 16, 2022 Cottage Grove Council meeting, which I'm calling to order. The first order of business this evening, oh my goodness, can't talk, is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, will the clerk please do the roll?
Councilmember Kambata.
Here.
Councilmember Dennis.
Here.
Councilmember Thiede.
Here.
Councilmember Olson.
Here.
Mayor Bailey.
Here. Next on our agenda this evening is open forum. This is the opportunity for anyone that wants to speak on something that's not on tonight's agenda is welcome to do so at this time. Being that it looks from what I can see, by the way, we had a sign-up sheet out in the entryway. And all of the ones that I'm noticing on here are for the Mississippi Dunes, so.
I didn't know how it worked.
Yeah, no, you're fine. It's separate than the Mississippi Dunes?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but what I'll tell the people that are speaking or want to speak on the Mississippi Dunes, that we'll do that when we actually have the actual discussion as a council on the Mississippi Dunes. Then I'll just go down the list and call people up there. So if there is somebody that wants to speak on something that's not on tonight's agenda, is welcome to do so. And again, just please limit state name, address, and 3 minutes.
This will be very, very quick, okay? It should probably be one of the longest things I ever talk about, but Bonnie Matter, 6649 Inskip Avenue South, Cottage Grove resident. And thank you, Mayor and council members, for letting me speak. I just want to let you know that I want to say thank you to Director Costello for helping me understand the 2040 Comp Plan Amendment Update process. Tonight, that resolution was on, or will be on the consent agenda, and the City Council's approval of the consent agenda means the staff has the okay to move forward with requesting review and approval from the Metropolitan Council. I understand that piece. So thank you. And thank you to all of the city staff, because they have been gracious. They have answered all of my questions when I knew the right question to ask. So thank you. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm sure staff appreciates that too. All right. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak on something that's not on tonight's agenda? All right. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the open forum. We'll move to number 5, which is adoption of the agenda.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second. We have a motion by Councilmember Dennis, second by Councilmember Thiede. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So we'll move to number 6, which is presentation, and we do have one tonight, which is exciting. We have a presentation regarding the Woolery Scholarship Fund donation, and Councilmember Olson is kind of the one that got this started. So if are you going to go over there to speak? Okay. Yep. So Councilmember Olson will kind of get this kicked off.
Thank you, Mayor, and my council colleagues. It's nice to be at this point in time again in our annual workflow to talk about Craig Woolery, who's here with us tonight, and the Craig Woolery Scholarship for those who are interested in pursuing a career as a first responder. I don't know if Craig wants to come up or sit. Knowing Craig, he probably wants to sit, but we'll call him up here shortly, okay? I stand before you as the son of a volunteer firefighter. And one of my greatest memories of childhood is the time I got to spend with my dad at the fire station. You never forget the smell when you walk in. A fire station has a very unique smell. It's the big tires and the rubber boots and the turnout gear. And even today, when I walk into a fire station and that smell hits me, it takes me back very quickly to my childhood. And I always looked upon my dad and his colleagues as real heroes in the community. And I feel that way about all first responders. I've always been a big supporter of public safety. Got my start in city government as a public safety, health, and welfare commissioner for the city of Cottage Grove for 4 years. And I was very grateful for that opportunity. And I look forward every year to the budget when I get to look at what we need to do for our first responders, whether it's facilities, whether it's equipment, whether it's personnel, to make sure that, number one, our community is served at the utmost, very top of the service level that we can provide, and number two, that everybody gets to go home. We had, when I was a Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Commissioner, we had a staff liaison and we had a council liaison. The council liaison was Mayor Bailey. He was a council member at that time. The staff liaison was Captain Craig Woolery, and I instantly learned, working with Craig, what an absolute gem of a public servant Craig was. Craig gave a lot of years to the city. I'm not going to mention it, he might, but he gave a lot of years to the city in service, and there are a lot of things that Craig did for our community that I think sometimes go, unmentioned. He was a medic for the city of Cottage Grove. He was a law enforcement officer. He was a DARE officer. He was a liaison to the Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Commission. He was a bicycle cop. I remember him riding the bike around town. Craig made his move through the various ranks in the city, and due to his diligence, his hard work, his talent, his ability, and his care for all of our residents, ultimately became our public safety director. As public safety director, Craig made an indelible mark on this community, and he's too humble to ever talk about it himself, but this building isn't here without Craig Woolery. He made this happen as the director of public safety. He was the one who worked hand in hand with the city council to ensure that our first responders had everything that they needed in terms of a facility to do the job to the very best of their ability. The Hero Center doesn't happen without Craig Woolery. He was the one who, at the outset of the planning for the Hero Center, made sure that everybody was assigned a proper role, did all the work, et cetera. Our current public safety director, Pete Kerner, isn't here as our public safety director without Craig Woolery, because Craig made an impression on Pete and worked directly with him, groomed him, made sure that he gave him all the coaching and training and development he needed, and also pushed him to get his 4-year degree in order to eventually ascend to the level that he's at now. We are blessed in the city of Cottage Grove to have outstanding public safety services here. And there's not as many communities today as maybe 10 years ago who are able to say that. We have a tremendous culture here. And because of that culture, which Craig helped develop and was instrumental in carrying forward through Pete and the rest of the leadership team, when we have a job opening, we get lots of applicants. Other communities can't necessarily say that. And again, it's because Cottage Grove is a great place to work. It is a place where the local government values our public servants, especially in the public safety realm, but throughout all city services, and provide what they need in order to do their job well. When Craig retired in 2018, my wife, Kim, and I talked at length about the way that we would like to honor his legacy in the city of Cottage Grove. And what we landed on is a partnership with the Cottage Grove Public Safety Board, which at that time I think was the crime board, but it's gone through some changes, to put together a scholarship program for young people from the community who desire to pursue a career in public safety. We need great public servants in the public safety realm. We have them now, and we're going to need them in the future. A 2-year degree at Century College is about a $12,000 expense, and you can become a law enforcement officer with a 2-year degree in the state of Minnesota. But you also have to go through certificate training, which is another $5,400 in today's money. So you're looking at about a $17,500 expense just to come out of school. And then you have to do all the other fun things in order to get hired. We wanted to help young people who want to pursue a career in public safety to gain some financial wherewithal where it wouldn't be quite so difficult for them to get started on that path. And particularly, we wanted young people who emulate Craig Woolery. We, my wife and I, and many of us, understand at Craig's core, he is a public servant, has always been a public servant, gave of himself like nobody I've ever seen. In fact, when he became public safety director, he understood he was going to have to oversee firefighters. Well, he never was a firefighter, but he went to firefighter training. He actually put himself through firefighter school, firefighter training, so that he could have credibility with the guys who drive the red trucks. I know that lots of people appreciated that, including me and including all of you. So tonight, what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask Craig to come forward along with the representatives that are here from the Cottage Grove Public Safety Board, so that my wife and I can make our annual donation to the Craig Woolery Scholarship Fund. We have committed to $500 per year in perpetuity. That means as long as I'm around and she's around, and her grandma lived to be 110, so she'll outlive me. But we would like to make our donation tonight, and in addition to that, I want to make a donation on behalf of the Cottage Grove Lions Club. I am a member of the Lions Club. I'm on the board. Chief Kerner is on the Lions Club, or in the Lions Club. And our Lions Club last night agreed to a $1,500 donation to the Craig Woolery Scholarship Fund this year, which will be on top of the $1,000 donation that Kim and I are going to make this year. So I've got 2 checks for you for $2,500. There may be some others here who want to make donations. I see we've also got some celebrities in the house, including Sheriff Starry from Washington County, who actually worked with Craig intimately for many years on SWAT and other things. So if I could get, Sheriff Starry, Craig, his wife Katie, I see we've got our county commissioner here, we've got our state senator here, and my colleagues up here to come down. I think it would be really nice to honor Craig tonight, make these donations, and then if anybody else has anything they'd like to say or any donations they'd like to make, provide that opportunity. And I thank you.
Awesome. Let's go on up front. Craig, come on up. And Sheriff Starry, I expect to hear some stories.
There's probably some you can't tell, but yeah.
Are you done now out there?
So put Julie in.
All right, let's get the board up here.
Yep, we'll scooch over here.
So how about if I do this, if this is good? I'm going to hand you the mic, and that way you can also kind of introduce Craig, but also as people are handing some checks out here, they can just hand them to you directly, if that's good, or we can go that way. All right?
We can do that. Thank you. I've known Craig ever since he was hired and ever since he's retired, so it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And every officer always spoke highly of him. My dad was an officer, spoke highly of him. So it's great that we're able to do this for Cottage Grove applicants, to give them money to pursue a career. So thank you, Craig and Katie. There's always a woman behind the man, so. So thank you for that.
So here's 2 checks from me, one from the Lions and one from my house for the Craig
Incredible.
Woolery Scholarship Fund, and then I believe there might be some others who have
Thank you.
some contributions to make.
Thank you.
Was there anybody else who wanted to speak
Yeah,
on
does
this
anybody want
tonight?
to speak?
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
There's another one.
Oh my God, Steve Dennis. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson's got it.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but this is a great program. Thank you, Councilmember Olson, for starting this up. The sheriff and I talked quite a bit about the challenges of bringing in new deputies and how it's getting to be more and more of a fight between cities and counties and state, fighting over a shrinking pool of officers. And steps like this and coming up with ways that we get more people involved and realizing the honor of being an officer or a deputy, and then also making it possible they can afford to start that venture, because you're right, it's very expensive. I've had those conversations of getting going, and if they can get started along with learning how honorable being a deputy and an officer is again, it's going to get us out of this crunch that we have now. So thank you. Thank you.
I just want to say one more thing. With the amount of money that we're getting for our donation pool, I'm hoping as we move into next year, because our standards are already set for this year, that maybe we will be able to increase either the amount of people that can accept a scholarship or increase the amount that they're getting. So this is absolutely incredible. So thank you, everybody.
Did Sheriff Starry, Senator Bingham, have anything to say? Sure.
I just want to say thank you. It's an honor to be here. Been here a few times for these presentations, and Craig's my friend. Way back in the day, so the SWAT team actually converged back in 1995, and that's how old we are, right? And but that was part of it, and just learning and watching him come up and through the ranks on the SWAT team, and soon after I did as well. He was the commander, I was the commander of the SWAT team, but learning his professionalism, his demeanor, his calmness. There's no one that deserves this honor more than Craig, so I just want to say thank you for all you've done and all that you continue to do. So.
And Justin, you know I can't talk about Craig without crying. Craig was my DARE officer, and so just your continued desire, and I just love your wife too. Your continued giving back is amazing, and you do it day in and day out, even after retirement. So you are just such a shining example of law enforcement, and I know whether it is Officer Schoen, Sheriff Starry, a lot of these officers look up to you. And you had a very good impact on law enforcement, but more importantly, this community. Thank you, Craig.
Let's let Craig say a word or two.
I don't know if there's, I don't think there's anything I could say. I've been blessed. What a great team. Our city staff through all the years, and the officers, the Public Safety Board given opportunities. Councilmember Olson, you're all good friends and very professional. Pete, our Director of Public Safety, has built a great department, and it just wasn't a good opportunity to bring young local kids up and give them an opportunity to get some education and get a great career with a great city, hopefully.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
Mayor, thank you all.
Anyone else?
Yeah, is there anybody else who would like to speak at this point? I guess the only other question I have for you, Julie, is, so I know you said you've got the parameters set for this year. So if somebody's interested in, learning more about the scholarship, do you want to share a little bit, or can you share a little bit with what they can do or who they can contact?
You can go to the Cottage Grove, Cottage Grove Public Safety Board Facebook. We have information there, or the Cottage Grove Public Safety Board at gmail.com. Our deadline is May 1st, and we will announce our people that will receive the scholarship at the end of May.
They also have it at the high schools.
And yes, everything was given to the high schools, Century, Rasmussen, anybody from Cottage Grove that's in some sort of public safety will have an opportunity to get this scholarship if they follow the guidelines for the scholarship.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, one thing before we do the clapping, and thank you, by the way, for all those who are they're ready to go. The only other comment I want to mention, and it kind of goes back to Craig making the comment earlier about opportunities for people and local people actually to move up in the public safety realm. If you really do look at our police force right now in Cottage Grove, there is a large number of our officers are from Cottage Grove. They're born and raised here and came up through, or St. Paul Park, and I know you live there now, but the point of the matter is there's been lots of opportunity for local people to come up, and that's kind of how we're looking at it too, is if somebody from Cottage Grove is interested or is currently, in our police different programs that we have, yes, let us know and let Julie know, and they'll be more than happy to throw your name in the hat for this opportunity to help pay for some of your expenses and maybe become a police officer or public safety personnel here in Cottage Grove. So on behalf of myself, I know, and the rest of everybody up here, first of all, thank you to the board for making this happen, and let's give Craig a round of applause. And I'm being told we want one more picture? All right. Here's the guy that knows the camera. All right, Pete. There we go. Thank you, everybody. And thanks for all the donations, everybody up here.
Thank you guys for your donations. I appreciate it.
All right. That's a nice way to kick off the evening, right? Getting a scholarship continuing to move forward. All right. While they're heading out, the next item on our agenda is consent. Is there anything council would like to pull on consent for discussion? Councilmember Kambata.
I'd like to pull H.
H, okay, and I think Councilmember Thede, you mentioned?
Which one was it?
D, I think.
D?
D is Planning Commission Chair?
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything else, council? All right, I guess we'll go ahead then, if you're okay with that, Mr. Kambata. We'll start with you, and H is Park Recreation and Natural Resource Commission appointments.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak on behalf of Susanna Brown as Chair of Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources Commission. She's a current commission member. She's a community psychologist by trade, and she recognizes the value of our park system, our really amazing park system in helping our community helping with community health and wellness. Some of her achievements that she's proud of is she was a partner in the implementation of the 2040 comp plan. She also was instrumental in the implementation of the community arts trail and adding adult outdoor exercise equipment to our park system. So, and she just loves parks in general. So I think she's a great fit for the chair. And then her and I also had the opportunity to appoint, or interview rather, 2 applicants for vacant seats on that commission, Dave Olson and Shane Waterman. Both were very experienced, very passionate about parks, and they come with a diverse background. One has served on several other parks commissions and comes with a ton of experience. The other has extensive experience with CGAA and probably knows all of our parks very, very well to begin with. So great resources to have.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. And Councilmember Thede, yours is appointment of the Planning Commission Chair.
Yes, I'm the liaison to the Planning Commission this year, and I'd like you to consider reappointing Evan Frazier as the Planning Commissioner Chair. He was actually been on the commission for about 4 years and took over for Councilmember Kambata when he got appointed to the council. And so he does an excellent job. So I'd appreciate your support in appointing him as the chair for Planning Commission.
All right, sounds good. The only other comment I'll just mention in a general sense, and it was, you mentioned it in yours, Tony, with regards to appointments. We've actually, in the last month or so, we've gotten actually quite a few people that are telling us they're now interested in joining on these commissions. For the longest time, it seemed like it was like pulling teeth to get people to participate and become a valued member within our commissions and that for advisement. So very happy to see the large number of people that want to get appointed and join our team. So seeing nothing else being pulled on tonight's consent, at this point then, I'll look for a motion to approve consent.
I motion to approve consent.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kambata, second by Councilmember Olson. Any further discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So if you happen to be here for anything on this evening's consent calendar, all of those items have been approved. Next on our agenda this evening is 8 is approved disbursements. 8A is to pay the bills.
Motion to approve disbursements.
All right, so we have a
Second.
motion by Councilmember Dennis, second by Councilmember Thede. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is 9 is public hearings. We do have one this evening. The public hearing is Renewal by Anderson Opus Development Company, LLC. A couple different things here, but easement vacation, preliminary and final plat, site plan, variance, and easement agreement. And Emily Schmitz is going to walk us through this, so welcome, Emily.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. As you indicated, several applications before you this evening, all submitted by Renewal by Anderson in conjunction, of course, with Opus, who is helping them through the process. Again, most of you are familiar. The Renewal by Anderson campus is at the intersection of Jamaica and 100th Street, just north of 100th Street there. Over the years, you have seen them expand exponentially. They continue to grow, which is wonderful news. Little background, 1998 was when Renewal by Anderson received their first approvals to operate here in Cottage Grove. They expanded in 2015. In 2018, they needed some additional room for some truck and trailer parking, so they purchased around 9 acres to the west. In 2019, you'll recall that they did purchase an additional 19 acres and constructed about 350,000 square foot building. And here they are before us again with their continued rapid growth. So we'll start talking about the plat quickly. In 2019, they created an Outlot A and the Lot 1, Block 1, which is where they completed their expansion. With their purchase of the additional 27 acres, which is Outlot A, we need to combine those parcels to create a buildable lot as they expand their building. As part of that replatting process, we do need to vacate all of the existing easements within that platting area, clean it up a bit, specifically the permanent easement that extends over the existing water main that goes through the site as a part of this project. It's tricky to see, but the water main actually extends through the parking lot at this point, but as they expand their building, the building will go over that water main, so they will relocate the water main as a part of this project, therefore will relocate that permanent easement as well. And then, of course, all of our standard typical drainage and utility easements, and one additional easement along the perimeter of Hemingway and the north property line. That is for a future stormwater project, but we thought we would encompass it as a part of this project. So their site plan, as I've indicated, an additional 330,000 square feet they're looking to add on to their existing building. Same use, distribution, light manufacturing, office, warehouse type uses. The only thing different about this expansion is they are, of course, proposing 2 additional access points off of Hemingway Avenue. In addition, a guardhouse will be located just off of that first access to help regulate that truck traffic coming in and out of there. Again, still proposing those loading docks off of 100th Street, continuing that from the existing building. Specifically talking and looking at the parking, they are proposing to add an additional 250 passenger parking spaces just on the north side of that expansion area. In addition, I believe it's 173 or 4 additional truck parking for a total of 281 spaces on the site when they're completed with the expansion. As we look at the landscaping, I always talk about the tree mitigation and completing that inventory. Renewal has done just that, but as a part of this project, they are proposing to plant additional trees on the site to meet that mitigation, specifically focusing on the Hemingway and 100th Street sides of the proposed expansion to provide some additional buffering and mitigation of their activities that do happen on the site. So needless to say, they are proposing to meet our minimum landscape standards. The one thing I do want to note is as you look here at the landscape plan, there's a substantial amount in that corner of the site at Hemingway and 100th. We're still working through verifying if there is in fact a wetland there. So you may see this landscape plan adjust by the time it goes in if we need to relocate some of those trees from that corner. But we'll work through that prior to the issuance of a building permit. And finally, I wanted to focus on additional landscaping that is being proposed on the existing berm along 100th Street. The applicant is proposing to plant some additional 6 and 10 foot coniferous trees to kind of fill in some of those gaps and provide some additional buffering again to that activity, some of the lights and the truck traffic that's currently taking place on the Renewal site. Brief mention of some additional signs proposed. Of course, Renewal's campus continues to grow, therefore signage is of course helpful in that area. The proposed monument signs at the Hemingway access points will match the additional monument signs that you've seen over the last handful of years that Renewal has installed. The wall signage will again match the existing signage on the building as well. And finally, the architecture, of course, the tip-up panels are proposed to match, of course, exactly the existing building on the site with some glazing and metal canopies over the entrance doors that break up those facades. So with that, several recommendations before you this evening. I know Opus and Renewal are here in the audience if you have specific questions for them as well.
All right, thank you. First of all, Council, do you have any questions for staff at this point before I? Would Renewal and or Opus like to come up?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Phil Catton with Opus Development Company, 10350 Bren Road West, Minnetonka. As you can see with the recommendations up here, I think it's just worth noting that on behalf of the Renewal by Anderson and Opus team, we just genuinely appreciate all the collaboration with staff. Something like this doesn't happen without the ongoing, almost daily communication that we've had with staff and with your legal team as well. So we just want to say it's a privilege to be back in Cottage Grove. We didn't think we'd be back this quickly because we just barely cut the ribbon and we're already putting up another one. So again, we're excited to be back, and I know I speak for Renewal by Anderson as well, that they're excited to continue to grow their campus here and continue to be a part of the community here in Cottage Grove. So certainly stand ready and available for questions.
Any questions for here? Guess not. I think it's good. I mean, we've worked very well with you guys in the past on that whole project. It basically, that's it now. It's the road is kind of the blocking point, so might have to go somewhere across or somewhere. We'll leave that alone for later. But thank you. All right, since there's no other questions for council, what I'm going to do is, this is a public hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. If there is anybody that wants to speak on this item, is welcome to do so at this time. Is there anybody at all? This is just for the Renewal by Anderson. Yep. All right, seeing none then, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And in council, we do have, if I'm reading this right, is it 4 resolutions before us that we'll need to take separately. So you can start with number 2, whoever would like to.
Mayor, I'll move that we adopt Resolution 2022-041, vacating and discontinuing public drainage and utility easements within Glen Grove Industrial Park 6th Edition and Glen Grove Industrial Park 9th Edition.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Olson. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Thiede. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll go ahead and move that we adopt Resolution 2022-042, approving the preliminary plat and final plat to be called Glen Grove Industrial Park 10th Edition, which combines Lot 1, Block 1, Glen Grove Industrial Park 8th Edition, and Outlot A, Glen Grove Industrial Park 8th Edition.
All right, that tongue twisters there. That's a motion by Councilmember Thiede. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, second by Councilmember Dennis. Again, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 4 on the report. You want to take it?
I'm next.
We'll just keep moving on down.
A motion to adopt Resolution 2022-043, approving the site plan review for proposed construction of an approximately 330,000 square foot building expansion to support warehouse, manufacturing, and office uses, and a variance permitting loading docks to face a public street.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Dennis. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Councilmember Kambata. Any discussion on this? Yes, Councilmember Olson.
Threw you a curveball, didn't I?
You did. I was looking, though.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to thank our friends at Renewal by Anderson and Opus. They have been just wonderful community partners since Renewal built their first edition. I think we're on number 4, number 5. What are we on?
Is it 5 now?
How many expansions have we gone through?
4 total.
4 total. You know, they're a terrific contributor to our community in so many ways, and we're very excited that you're continuing to grow and prosper here in Cottage Grove, and we'll probably see you again in a few months for another one, but thanks very much.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And then number 5.
I'll motion to approve executing a drainage and utility easement agreement with Renewal by Anderson to be located within 40 feet of the west property line along Hemingway Avenue and 30 feet along the north property line for a future storm sewer pipe.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Kambata. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Olson. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now, I didn't do it in the middle of the block, or as Councilmember Olson did, but since you brought up donations, and I know I see the guy right in front of me here, I had, and I'm saying this in a positive way, for those that don't know, our Cottage Grove Festival float basically was destroyed. I mean, it was falling apart, and so it was not safe for our ambassadors to be riding around all the communities they go to. So I had reached out to Adam, who's in the room for Renewal by Anderson, who graciously and very quickly, I heard today, donated $5,000 to help complete the float. So between Renewal by Anderson and 3M, they're able to completely refurbish a new float that they expect to be ready by May. And so for sure it'll be ready before the Strawberry Festival in June. But they're hoping they're going to be able to get a couple new city or other city parades in before then, just to show off this new float. So on my behalf, and I know on the group here and the Strawberry Fest and everybody else, thank you for Renewal's support of our community and helping the Ambassadors Program flourish with this new float. So thank you.
Let's give him an applause.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, there we go. And again, we'll probably see in a month or two another development here. So thank you again. All right, next on our agenda is bid awards, number 10. There is none this evening. Now we're on to the regular agenda, and we do have 2 items. The first item is A, and I know everybody in our community has been waiting for this, is Pizza Ranch, planned unit development, site plan, and conditional use permit. Mike Morosa. I had it right the first time. So Mike is going to take us through from our planning staff. So thank you, Mike, and welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening, everyone. As the Mayor just said, before us tonight is Pizza Ranch. They are requesting a planned unit development, site plan review, and conditional use permit. This is Cottage Grove PR that submitted an application for this. The location is located at 7855 Harkness Avenue. This might look familiar. This plan was previously approved in 2019. However, it didn't come to fruition. The building permit was never issued and the approval was expired. And that's why we're back tonight for the almost identical proposal to last time. Just a couple of minor changes. The property is zoned mixed use and is guided as mixed use on the land use plan. The applicant is requesting a planned unit development for flexibility for vehicle stacking and materials on the principal structure, and a conditional use permit is required for restaurants with the drive-through. As you can see on the screen here on the left, this is the original site plan that was approved in 2019 and building elevations. The site plan's the same. There's some minor modifications that changed the drive-through. We just did a little change there to make this add a little additional stacking here and delineate the drive-through a little better. The proposal is the same square footage, 8,046 square feet. It's a family-style restaurant. 236 seats. There is an order pickup window in this general location. And as part of this building, there will be community spaces and a fun zone. The fun zone is located in this general area. And there's community breakout rooms as well. A little bit about the site plan review. There's an access is located off Oak Park Drive. And the applicant is proposing to install a sidewalk adjacent to Oak Park that will connect to Oakwood Park, and then there'll be also an addition that come down here to service the building, and there'll be an addition off the existing access to the Muddy Call facility to the south. The pickup window is located right here, as I previously mentioned. This order pickup window is unique. The orders are placed ahead. You do not place your orders at the window. So people coming to get their order can pick it up at the window here. They do not order there. So all their orders are placed in advance. In the event that a pizza or a meal is not ready, vehicles can park here and staff will bring them out to them. So that is why the applicant's requesting flexibility of stacking, as it's not your typical drive-through where you have an ordinance requires 6 vehicles. They only need 3 at the most that they see because the orders are prepared in advance. There's no need for additional stacking. The proposal has 98 parking stalls. City code does require 79 stalls. The additional stalls will be utilized for the community room and the fun zone arcade. Architectural materials, the applicant did request a little flexibility here. City code requires 65%. The building's at about 52%. The materials include stone veneer, glass windows, and engineered composite wood siding or LP. It's another name for it, concrete siding. Otherwise, this is identical to the previous approval, just the materials are just slightly reduced. The west elevation does have 63% class 1 materials, north elevation 50%. Again, the east elevation has 44 and then the south elevation has 51. So for a total of 52% overall. Some uniqueness here on the building, there is some architectural lighting proposed. The cove lighting, which is this lighting that's kind of like tucked under here. This is called cove lighting. You can see right here, it's kind of that glow. And then there's also tube lighting, which is the neon banding you can see familiar at the top here. The cove lighting will be located in the southwest and north elevations. Tube lighting will be on the south and west elevations. And as part of the PUD flexibility, we worked with the applicant to remove any lighting on the east side of the building adjacent to the Oakwood Park. And that was done by intent. We want to protect the park from any lighting or any negative impacts, which there won't be any from this, but we just want to make sure that we have the dark sky there and there's no additional impacts. In addition, we are requesting light shields be placed on the parking lot lighting adjacent to the park. There's a couple light poles on that side. We're just gonna have shields on there so the light does not bleed over into the park as well. So overall, the applicant's been great to work with on that. And that was in return for the flexibility on the building materials. The landscaping ordinance requires a minimum of 20 overstory trees, 18 conifers, and 43 shrubs. The applicant's proposing 20 overstory trees, 13 conifers, and 86 shrubs. As you notice, the conifers is slightly less than what the ordinance requires. However, they make it up in significantly additional shrubs on site. There's 86, and a lot of those shrubs are conifers. It's a little unique there, so they're not gonna be the tall conifer trees, but there's conifer shrubs that will be utilized to add landscaping to the site. With that completes my presentation. I believe the applicant is here for any questions.
All right, first, let me check with council. Any questions for staff at this point? Councilmember Olson?
Mike, thanks for the presentation. Good job. I know that, you know, the city tends to be pretty firm when it comes to the building materials that we want our business partners to utilize because we're trying to gain, number one, consistency. Number two, we want the buildings to be, you know, of good quality and nice. But I also know that during the time that we're living in right now, it's pretty hard to get a hold of some of those building materials. So I applaud the staff on working closely with the applicant to find a happy medium where we could still push this project forward. It's a very important project to lots of people in the city. We hear about it a lot. So thank you for being flexible and working with the applicant to land on a plan that works for everybody.
All right. Yes, Councilmember Kambata.
In regard to the exterior materials, I know that Pizza Ranch has a very distinctive look, and with the way, in addition to scarcity, that was another consideration, and they're asking for some flexibility in the percentages of those materials. So I think we found a great compromise for them.
All right, sounds good. Is the applicant want to speak at all? Since you're going up there and you state your name and address for the record, I have two questions for you. You might guess what one of them might be.
Mayor Bailey and Council, thank you. My name is Gary Wolliver from Vierbecker Associates out of Reedsburg, Wisconsin. We are the civil engineers for this project. And as staff did an excellent job of presenting this. This project was approved in 2019, the fall of 19. Everybody knows what happened in 20, and to be honest, the Swanson are pretty happy that it's back on the table again and moving forward, so. There really isn't much changes that were made to it, and I will tell you that the biggest change to the plans, we incorporated the improvements that the city did on Oakwood Park, so that they reflect what's out there now and we could actually tie into the curb and gutter and sidewalks. The water main was installed by the city last year, so that was shown also. And really the only other change was the extension of the island by the drive-up window. We added 3 additional stalls for stacking if they need them for the drive-up. But other than that, it's basically the same project that it was 2.5 years ago.
It was a long time. It was a long time. And we're obviously glad to have you guys back. The question I had for you is, what's kind of your construction schedule? I know with the way supplies and stuff have been, as Councilmember Rose was saying, it can be somewhat of a challenge, but I'm assuming you've taken that into consideration. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm talking to Ernie Jr., once construction starts, he's hoping 4 months to be completed.
Okay.
But that's all, it's one thing to get the building up, it's another thing to get the tables and chairs and stuff that goes inside. So it's a little bit up in the air.
Okay, that's fine.
I think they're planning on starting pretty much as soon as they can here, which might be April or May or June, I'm not sure.
Okay, perfect. And for the public, I'll just mention, one of the nice things too that they were sharing with us 2 years ago when this came about is the size of the game room, or what did you call it, playland or something?
Fun room, I think.
Fun room. It's fairly significant in the size, and that is one thing that we're hearing from our community that they're excited about, was when this opens up, is that large fun room and the opportunity for meeting rooms too, so. Good. Council, any questions for him at all? Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks for coming tonight. We're glad to have you back. So council, we have one motion before us, if somebody wants to take it.
I'll motion. I motion to adopt Resolution 2022-22-046, approving planned unit development, site plan review, conditional use permit for a drive-through for the proposed Pizza Ranch to be located at 7855 Harkness Avenue.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Kambata, second by Councilmember Olson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. All right, finally.
You're
Get
in
you
walking
going.
distance from my house, so we'll be seeing each other a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. All right, thank you. Next on our regular agenda this evening is Mississippi Landing, which is a zoning amendment, site plan, and preliminary plat. And Emily, you're back with us this evening to walk us through this one.
I am. Good evening, council. As indicated, Mississippi Landing is the next item before you this evening. Several of those applications, but I think it's important that we just kind of take a step back and look at a little bit of the background and all of the steps that have been taken to get to where we are today. So I'll start back in around 2011 when we worked through the 2030 Comprehensive Plan amendment. We took a look at the golf course, and the thought was we need to differentiate the golf course from park, understanding full well that a golf course could potentially redevelop. And we wanted to make sure that we had that differentiation in our land use plan. Fast forward to our look at our 2040 comprehensive plan. Around 2017, that process started. We understood that there could potentially could be a redevelopment of the golf course, and so we said, "God, we need to have some additional planning efforts put in place before we can let something happen or work through some sort of a project on that site." So we guided it as transition area planning, which requires additional planning efforts. In this case, a master plan, which the city initiated in early 2020. If you might recall, we did hire ISG as a consultant to help us work through that master planning process. There were two parts to that master plan. It was a focus on, of course, the park master plan, as well as the zoning efforts as a part of that master plan. So as you can see down in the corner, the zoning portion of the master plan provided for a large portion of the site, guided hopefully for some single-family housing, and a small portion for potential medium density in that north corner, of course, as we looked at the railroad tracks and some other site restrictions that just seemed to fit in the area. So the master plan was approved. In order to bring the comprehensive plan up to par with that approved master plan, we worked through that comprehensive plan amendment to kind of align those two earlier on the agenda. The comprehensive plan was a part of your approval this evening, so that will be sent to the Metropolitan Council for their review. It's important to note that the applications that we're reviewing this evening are, of course, contingent on that approval of the comprehensive plan amendment at the Metropolitan Council. And finally, I wanted to, of course, make mention of the AAW and that process that has taken place as well. That notice of decision was approved by you, the City Council, on March 2nd, which noted no additional need for environmental review on the site. So the details of the proposed preliminary plat and the site plan. It's a little bit twofold. We have Pulte Homes partnering with Lifestyle Communities. So we have the single-family portion of the proposed development. It's important to note the 50-foot wide lots, active adult lots, as we're referring to them, closer to the railroad track side. There will be an HOA for those lots that will provide lawn maintenance and snow removal. As you move further to the west, the lot sizes do increase as you get closer to the existing residential lots on the west side there. There will be an HOA, but they will not be providing the lawn care and snow removal for those particular lots. But again, it's important to note that those larger lots have been proposed on purpose to create a larger buffer near those existing residents on the west side there. And then the cooperative proposed Lifestyle Communities on that north side, a total of 60 units. It is a 4-story cooperative living building with those condo units in there, as well as some twin cottages for those twin home units in there as well. 2 access points are proposed to the development as a whole, of course meeting the public safety and fire requirements as a part of development. It's also important to note the proposed realignment of 103rd Street that will align with Washington County's Southwest Arterial Study that they did approve. Instead of an abrupt T at Gray Cloud Island Trail, it will be a little bit more gentle or gradual as you come around that curve. And the final application as a part of tonight's proposal, of course, is the rezoning of the site proposed at R4 or low density residential with a PUD or a planned unit development. And I thought it was important to note a planned unit development, of course, is used as a planning tool. A lot of times for some flexibility, but is used to encourage and provide life cycle housing, create more of a cluster for development as we preserve some natural resources or open spaces within developments, and of course, making sure that we're consistent with that comprehensive plan. So again, we use that PUD as a tool, and I thought it was important to highlight some of the portions of this development that we're kind of getting out of it as a city and as a community. Specifically, as we look at the major right-of-way that we're working through ensuring is platted as part of this process, which will certainly set up 103rd Street again as a part of that Southwest Arterial Study and a future county road that's going to provide some additional access to the island. Again, planning for the future and making sure that we're ready for that expansion when that time comes. I also wanted to note the open space. As we look at this proposed project as a whole, around 60 acres is proposed to be preserved as open space with the additional almost 14 acres of park space. So we're looking somewhere around 70 acres. When you put that to a percent, it's approximately, and again, I'm no engineer, so my math skills are a little tricky, but it's about 30% of the entire acreage of this particular project that is being proposed to be preserved as that open space, which is what we use that PUD tool for, is to say we're willing to give some flexibility, sometimes in a lot size, but we want to make sure that we're also preserving the important portions of a particular site. And again, this being a unique project, we were really able to capitalize on using that planning tool. It's also important to talk a little bit more in detail about the park. Again, that was a huge part of our master planning process. So kind of three parts to the park. The DNR is working with the property owner to purchase an additional 12 acres of park along the Mississippi River. The city is also working with some funding partners, Washington County, as well as the DNR, to acquire an additional 19.9 acres of park, which is above and beyond the dedicated almost 14 acres as a part of the development, which is that 10% that the developer is required to dedicate to the city. It's also important to make mention of the MERCA ordinance, which is kind of, I'll call it a layer on top of our existing ordinance, given this proposed project is adjacent to the Mississippi River. We needed to make sure that we were adhering to those standards as well. So that includes 2 different districts this property kind of lies within. So 20% required to be preserved as open space in the RN district and 10% required to be preserved within the SR district. The development proposed does in fact meet all of the MERCA's minimum standards. And then I also wanted to make mention of the floodplain. As you can see, this darker purple is that 100-year floodway or floodplain. The proposed lots, as you can see, are nowhere near that potential flood impact area. So we're certainly comfortable with the location of those lots. And here I am again. A tree inventory has been conducted as a part of this project. As most of you are probably well aware, it is a heavily wooded site. And so all of those qualifying trees are required to be identified and outlined. It's important to note the developer is in fact proposing to preserve just about half of those qualifying trees. Now, with that being said, that does mean that they are proposing to remove greater than they are permitted to remove on the site. Therefore, some tree mitigation efforts are going to be required with planting of trees on site. And if they're not able to meet that completely, the tree mitigation fee will be required. But it's also important, again, to identify the landscape plantings that they are proposing within the outlot areas to fill in gaps where they are preserving buffers along the westerly property line, as well as the easterly side of the project. And a quick mention of the utilities as a part of the Settlers Bluff development. As they constructed that, they made that water connection available, so this project will extend down 103rd with that water main. And then sanitary will require a permanent lift station. As most of you know, the elevation of this site is just a little bit different than when you drive on the other side of that railroad bridge, so that lift station will help with that process, pumping back into our sanitary system. And finally, a little look at the architecture. As you've seen with most projects within our community, we do have a varied architecture, varied products. The same will hold true with Pulte's proposed project here at Mississippi Landing. Varied roof pitches and those exterior materials. I've included these 2 images, but I want to make clear there are several options, not just these 2, and a lot of variation between all of those. So as this development comes together, you will certainly see that those varying products within the development. And then a little focus more on the cooperative portion of the development known as the Artesia Cooperative. They've made every effort to ensure that these proposed buildings blend as best as they can within the area. Understanding that it is within the MERCA, we want to make sure that it's blending as you have that visual impact potentially from the river, even though this proposed part of the project is certainly pushed back on the most northerly portion of the development. But they've also proposed a less pitched roof to bring that height down. A lot of folks call it a prairie style. And then, of course, as you can see, the color scheme that they've chosen with the natural stone will also help it to blend into the development as well. I thought it was also important to note that they are proposing just around 50% of those Class 1 materials in our community. We do strive, and I know we just worked through the Pizza Ranch, but incorporating those materials when we can. And so this particular project aligns, if not exceeds, with other projects that we've recently approved in the community. So with that, I will leave the recommendation before you this evening. I know both Pulte Homes and Lifestyle Communities are also here in the audience for any questions you might have specifically for them.
All right, so before you step away, council, any questions for staff at this point? All right, how about, you want to start with Pulte? You guys want to get up and speak for a few minutes, or state name, address for the record, obviously?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, Paul Hoyer, it's good to be here this evening. I live, or I'm going to give my office address, 7500 Flying Cloud Drive, Suite 670, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, 55344. We're excited to be here this evening. We've undertaken a lot of work, but none of this work could really be started until you folks did a lot of work. So we appreciate the work that's gone into the comp plan amendment and especially the master planning process. We know that between staff, Parks Commission, Planning Commission, and the City Council, a lot of thought went into the master planning process, a lot of discussion, and once the outcome was known, we patterned our development basically after your master plan. So we appreciate the work you've done. A lot of thought, a lot of work, a lot of energy has gone into this, a lot of discussion, both at the public level and also at meetings. So we appreciate that, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Any questions, council, for Pulte at this point? No? I think you're good. How about your partner for the senior portion?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Ben Landhauser, I'm the Executive Vice President for Lifestyle Communities. We're at 4938 Lincoln Drive, Edina, Minnesota. I would kind of echo everything that Paul said. It's been a great collaboration working with your staff, with representatives of the community, and appreciate the council having the foresight to have liaisons to the Planning Commission, so you all have kind of a firsthand understanding of public comments that come out. I'm here really just to kind of echo saying it's a privilege to be in your community. We're really excited about bringing this cooperative product here. Some new things that we haven't done in the Twin Cities, that Cottage Grove will be our first, particularly with those twin cottage buildings on this property, something we'll move forward as we continue cooperative housing around the Twin Cities. Again, happy to answer any questions, but really pleased to be here.
Thank you. And that was going to be my question, is where else have you done these projects? So I knew the homes piece, or the cottages, were going to be new. What about the actual cooperative type building?
Sure. Our company has been involved in cooperative housing for over 35 years. We've developed under a number of different brands, so things like Gramercy, Summerhill Cooperatives. We've also had involvement in financing of real life cooperatives. More recently, and also in Washington County, we've been involved in Zavago cooperatives. We just opened up Zavago Stillwater at the beginning of this year. I was actually just there before coming here tonight. So we've done a lot under this Artesa brand that we've presented as part of this project, kind of our new portfolio of cooperatives. We have sites in Presale and Shakopee, the city of Mound. We were just last night getting approvals in the city of Golden Valley. And then Cottage Grove, and then we're looking at other sites in and around the metro area as well.
All right, thank you for that. Do you have a question? Councilmember Thiede?
So I know for us and so forth, you've explained the cooperative type of arrangement, but maybe you can kind of explain what that is a little bit real quick for all those that
Sure.
are watching on TV live.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit more about the cooperative housing. It is a different model that not everyone has heard of, even though they're rather plentiful throughout the Twin Cities. It's still new. As an example, this is, I believe, the first one in the city of Cottage Grove. The easiest way we would kind of relate it to is what maybe a competitor product would be in a condominium. So most people understand condominiums, multifamily housing, but ownership based. And in a condominium, every owner really has their own mortgage on whatever their unit is. And then there's an association that takes care of common elements, both the grounds and then any common amenity spaces within that building. The cooperative, instead of having individual mortgages, we have one master mortgage. So in the case of this project, we have one site. Even though we have multiple buildings, there's a master mortgage that's for all structures, all property, and then our owners are actually shareholders. So they have exclusive rights to whatever their private residence is, but they're, in this case, 1/60th owner of all common elements. We do property reserves, so we're touching kind of the ins and outs of the buildings for an ongoing maintenance perspective, as things also need to be replaced down the road. Say carpet has gone through its useful life, appliances, of course, need to be refreshed at certain times. We have replacement reserves that are built into the monthly member fees that our cooperative owners pay, so that those things end up as a community-wide basis, get refreshed, and keeps that community vibrant.
Good. Any other questions, Council Frimm? Thank you, by the way, for explaining that. To your point, this is a first for Cottage Grove, this type of development, so it's good to hear that. Nothing against Pulte, because we've worked with you before. All right, thank you for that. The only thing, I know Mr. Gustafson is here, who is the property owner. Did you want to speak? I know you had signed up, but I thought maybe it'd be good, just since you are here with the other two, if you'd like to speak. And again, just state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor, council members, David Gustafson is my name. I reside at 1280 Ingerson Road, St. Paul, Minnesota 55112. Now, all of you are probably aware that my wife Dawn, sitting right over here, and I are the owners of the former Mississippi Dunes Golf Course. We also own a small parcel directly to the west of that golf course that also has river access. That's part of this development proposal. What you might not know is that we've owned that property since 2010. So we've been a property owner in Cottage Grove for 12 years. And shortly after we acquired that first piece in 2010, we signed up and joined Friends of the Mississippi River. So we, as members of FMR, we support them with annual financial contributions, and we volunteer at a number of their sponsored events like river cleanup days, invasive species removal, and storm drain stenciling. So we believe in conservation, and we actively support it. So it should come as no surprise then, when we decided to put the property on the market, the first people we met with was Friends of the Mississippi River. They indicated to us that they wanted to pull together other conservation groups and pool their money to present an offer to us to buy the full property and conserve it. And we were willing to listen. We were willing to entertain that offer, if you will. Matter of fact, we worked with them for 1 full year to do this. Numerous site visits, numerous online meetings, numerous phone calls and emails. But at the end of the day, we never received an offer from Friends of Mississippi. Nothing. What we did receive was a very fair offer from Pulte Homes. And that's the reason that we decided to go with Pulte Homes. That's why we support Pulte Homes and we support this development. And we hope that you all will, find it to your approval tonight when it comes to vote. So thank you and I will mention one thing on the conservation side. We are still working with the DNR for that upper portion, that 38 acres. So we're currently engaged with them to, again, take a look and entertain that prospect of conservation up there. So that's really all I had to say, unless you had any questions for me.
Yeah, Councilmember Olson.
First of all, thank you for being here, both of you. Really appreciate it. And I did know what you shared about FMR, and I appreciate you sharing it tonight publicly and on camera. When you came to the understanding that you weren't going to get an offer from FMR, I was actually asked as a council member to engage with FMR, and I was told the same thing, that the goal here is we want to pool all these resources, et cetera, and purchase this property. And I think I've heard that same thing time and time and time again, but no offer has come forward. And so I appreciate you sharing that you too engaged in honest and open dialogue with a potential buyer, but there just wasn't an agreement to be made. I do have a few questions, and I want to respect your privacy. So if there are things that I ask that you're not willing to talk about, please just say that, it's okay. But the first thing is, you know, I know when you bought the first parcel, when did you buy the golf course property?
We bought that initially in November of 2019.
2019, okay. And it was my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that that property was on the market, it was available. You could have bought it, I could have bought it, anybody could have bought it, but you took the risk and ultimately came up with the financial wherewithal to purchase the property. But it was a piece of property that was available. It wasn't like you had an exclusive opportunity to purchase it. Is that accurate?
Well, you know, without going into a ton of detail.
Again, yes.
There were some special conditions of this purchase that were prearranged with the previous owner.
Sure. Okay, good. Now, I also just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the site itself. We know that that site has been utilized for lots of different uses over the years. It was used for farmland at one point. It was scraped clean and it was used for a golf course. There's a portion of the property there that I think is currently under DNR control that was, you know, frankly, at one point used for industrial sorts of purposes, et cetera. And, you know, we've talked a lot about the importance of river access and the opportunity to, you know, have some park space there of a significant size to, first of all, provide an amenity that we don't really have for not just the residents of the proposed development, but the residents of the entire South Washington County community. And I think you share in that objective. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So as part of our conversation, you and Pulte and all of the other partners, you know, have worked very closely with our staff. I think you probably had dozens of meetings with our staff about how do we want to configure it, how do we want to shape it, et cetera. In the course of those conversations, I know that you've been very generous in terms of sort of the piece of property that you want to give us that would provide that river access. And then there's that adjacent piece of property that I think there's some negotiations with the county on. So can you just share briefly with everybody here, including us, sort of your vision for, you know, when I went to market and I wanted to sell this piece of property, you know, clearly there's a profit motive. I think you mentioned to me once, you know, hey, we took a risk and bought this thing as a retirement vehicle, really, which I don't blame you for, because it was a risk.
It was actually a little bit different than that. We were already retired.
Oh, okay, good,
Yeah,
good.
we were already retired. We were fortunate enough to retire early, but yeah, so we had substantial financial investment and risk involved, yes.
Right, and we've
Like you said.
had conversations about whether we needed to bifurcate the property with roadway and county, and we've been round and round and round, but your vision as a conservation-oriented individual for the river and that access point to the river, I think we've always shared the same goal, that we want to provide that. Could you just talk a little bit about sort of how that came to pass and maybe your dialogue with the developers, et cetera?
Yeah, well, it was an interesting process. And any property that we've owned before, and we started investing in properties after, in about 2010, but it was all single-family homes, right? You buy them, they're foreclosed, you fix them up, you rent them out. So this is the first big, like, chunk of land and development exercise that and I mentioned in all our meetings with staff and with folks like Pulte and so on that I have absolutely no experience as a developer, right? So, and I really still don't, quite honestly. I mean, I'm just amazed at the procedures and the processes involved in the collaboration, you know, with city staff and officials and, you know, builders and conservation. You know, one thing I did envision or hope for, my wife and I think, is that in terms of the conservation piece and how much of that property could be conserved, is was becoming apparent, even when FMR didn't come up with the offer that they'd kind of talked and promised us. It was becoming apparent that development really drives a lot of positive changes, it enables a lot of positive things in a situation like this. I think it's fair to say that without a developer involved, none of this conservation is possible. That's my impression of, having been involved in this for the last 2 years. But we always envisioned a boat landing, kind of the way it was drawn up. I mean, you hired the group ISG, right? And so they brought a lot of expertise. I know the parks planning did a lot of things. I don't know that I would have done anything different, We're especially excited the fact that, the most beautiful part of that property is planned to be conserved. For everybody to enjoy for, kind of in perpetuity. So those are the things we're excited about, and I think we share that with.
We do, and one last thing, unless my colleagues have some questions, is, maybe you could talk a little bit about the fact that, this is a private deal. We've talked at length for the last number of months about property owner rights, and when you purchase property, you take the risk that you took. That comes with certain responsibilities, but it also comes with rights. And I know that there are those who would like to think that the city is steering this ship, but the fact of the matter is, and I'm hoping you can speak to this, is you bought the property from the previous owner. That was a private agreement. We didn't get involved beyond any sort of approvals that needed to be done. And then you talked about, you engaged with FMR as, hey, maybe this is something that we want to sell for conservation purposes. Didn't happen. You talked about, you got an offer from Pulte, a good offer, a fair offer, that enabled some of the things that we're talking about tonight, including park space and those kinds of things. What role, if any, has the city played in this, in terms of your?
They played a big role. Actually, Justin, just to clarify a little bit, the process that we followed when we did take ownership of the property, we immediately reached out to the city.
Sure.
Just to introduce ourselves and to help us brainstorm.
Right. What could we do with this?
What could we do with this? We talked to really anybody that was interested in that property.
Sure.
That was our approach. We worked extensively with the previous owner on some plans he had. We worked with other builders and other developers, and like I said, all the conservation. So I don't remember your exact question.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, it's not as though the city forced you to sell this to Pulte.
No, none whatsoever. And I've always heard horror stories about working with city councils and city staff on these developments. But I gotta tell you, I don't know what they're talking about. This to me is like, seems to, there's some harmony here, and to see, what Pulte, Paul especially, and the staff have come up with, and to bring in the other organizations to have that parkland. I don't know if that's ever been done, but it's pretty impressive.
Well,
so
we've
I take
worked
a lot
very
of
hard on it.
positives.
Yes.
What's that?
We've worked very hard on it, and
So very impressive with the whole process, quite honestly. Now, if you don't approve it tonight, I'll probably change my mind, but
that's why we're talking now.
Totally up to you. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not trying to, but no, I've been very impressed with the city of Cottage Grove, and quite honestly, it's a little bittersweet because I love spending time down there. And
well, we do have other properties for sale in case you're interested, but I appreciate the conversation about the way in which the city staff is engaged with you and the council, and I know the mayor. We've been walking your property several times, and the fact of the matter is, we do aim to please as many people as we can, as often as we can, and our aim is pretty good, so thank you for that.
Well, and it's very impressive too, what the city has going on right now, to see all the activity, so kudos to you and the staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, any other comments at this point for Mr. Gustafson? No, that's good. Thank you. Thanks for coming up and sharing some insights and good questions, Councilmember Olson. So what I'll do at this point, and just so I can say this for those in the audience, the public hearing was officially done at the Planning Commission, so that was the official thing. But as everybody knows, and this council knows, I always give everybody an opportunity to speak, whether it's a public hearing or not. So that's kind of an extra thing, so we can hear feedback. So we do have some people that had signed up out in the entryway, and I'm going to go down that list first. To get those on there. And then if there happens to be somebody else that has a question or a comment that they want to make, they're welcome to do so. The only thing I would ask, again, is please, the policy or the way we've got it is a 3-minute. Our clerk over here, Joe Fishbach, will obviously do the little timer so you'll know if you're getting long or something, so please be careful. And then secondly is if somebody has repeated something or somebody has said something and you want to say, hey, this person just said what I wanted to say, it's ditto, I agree with what they said or something, that's fine, you can come up and do that too, versus if you have a whole amount of information you want to share. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak, and we'll start at the top here is William Dobler. And as he's walking up there, again, just as you do get up to speak for the record, please state your name and address.
William Dobler, I'm known as Doc, and I was the previous owner for 25 years. And I apologize, I guess I didn't realize that I have a lot to say, but I realize we have a 3-minute limit. So I didn't come prepared to answer all the questions that I really have from what I've learned, because I was not aware of the situation exactly until this afternoon, and I was not aware of Pulte's presentation, and I actually thought the area being discussed was a different piece of property up on Jamaica, and Ideal and 100. So I came prepared for the 3-minute limit, but I'm going to try to go as fast as I can here. We have always been a steward of the property. And first of all, we wanted to use the property to provide benefits to the city and including the police department and the fire department, and including the Strawberry Fest and of Cottage Grove and the Heritage Days of St. Paul Park, and we intended to try to provide benefits to the township of Gray Cloud, as well as St. Paul Park, and as well as Cottage Grove. The means of doing that, I guess I've learned a lot tonight. I didn't know exactly what they were, and I didn't plan on doing it until we would be in actual business. But we have a budget for building a 5-star hotel of $1.5 billion. I believe that, and there would be about 15 businesses included in that, some of which would come from Cottage Grove, some would come from St. Paul Park that have already been discussed with, and although we couldn't go very far since we didn't own the property. Is that 3 minutes already?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I was dinged out, but anyway, I have a lot more to say about it. We were the stewards of the property. We saved over 300 cedar trees, by tree spading them. We tried to save, we actually cleared so much brush and buckthorn that the Friends on the Mississippi asked us to put in a bid to use to give them a bid for doing it, and we actually submitted them a bid. We didn't get the bid, but we came close.
Well, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much.
Next on the list here was Sharon O'Boyle.
Okay, my name is Sharon O'Boyle. My grandmother was the one that owned the land before Mr. Debler did. And when that land was sold, I've said this before, it was sold to a somebody that would make sure that the environment was looked after, that would be compatible with the environment. What I want to talk about today, and my address is 9300 Great Cloud Trail South, Great Cloud Island Township.
Thank you.
Okay, I almost forgot. What I want to talk to today is when I looked at the newest picture of their proposed development. What they now propose is to tear down the historical house on the corner, which is where I grew up until I was 8 years old. That house was built in the 1800s. It is structurally sound. It has been given a historic designation in the EAW that's mentioned, and it meets, according to the EAW, it met those guidelines. Now, I hear the words put out by some people regarding Mississippi Dunes, regarding the house, not pristine. Well, my answer to that, the first word that comes to my mind is restoration. Restoration of the land, restoration of the house. When that house was given that designation, and Mr. Debler could probably speak to this, no further alterations could be done to that house. So it is basically as it was when I grew up until I was 8 years old, and my parents built the house that I live in today. That is unacceptable. What they are proposing now, and on the Cottage Grove website, it said that, now Pulte is saying that they need to remove it, tear it down, to put in a lift station. But on your website, it is showing 8 twin homes and a 4-story cooperative housing. And that would take the place of a historic site. Like I said, that's unacceptable. That's the bottom line. That house that house could not be torn down when it was owned as Mississippi Dunes Golf Course. And it cannot be, you need to do a better plan for the environment. There are endangered species on that property. It's, like you said, there's a floodplain involved. And you've got me on record before.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Bonnie Matter.
Bonnie Matter, 6649 Inskip Avenue South, Cottage Grove, resident, mayor and council members. Thank you very much for hearing my whatever I'm doing, okay? Thank you. As I mentioned, Director Costello was extremely helpful getting me up to speed on the comp plan amendment. But what I do not understand is why the Mississippi landing request is on this meeting's regular agenda. This request cannot move forward until the 2040 comp plan amendment is approved by the Met Council. That will not happen since the resolution was just approved on the consent agenda this evening. So it can't move forward. I also do not understand the review schedule on page 2 of 26 in the Mississippi Landing document. Specifically, the date starting with this evening's City Council meeting, March 16th, 2022. The 60-day review deadline should read May 16th at the earliest, and not February 27th. The 60-day extension should read July 16th at the earliest, and not April 28th. Please review the schedule and update it, please. I say this because how could the city accept an application on December 29th, 2021 from a developer when the 2040 Comp Plan Amendment updates to change the updated future land use map in the Mississippi Dunes area had not been submitted to the Met Council? I suppose the developer could submit a hold the date application, but the date or schedule should not start until the City Council has submitted and received approval on the 2040 Comp Plan Amendment. The zoning wasn't in place because the 2040 Comp Plan Amendment had not gone through the updating and approval process. Again, how does the city accept the application from the developer in December of 2021? And how do we now find ourselves with a resolution approving a site plan that looks like the rendering on page 2 of 26 of the documentation? Shown here is a city park that is accessed via a residential local street with housing on both sides of the street. It does not have an open, welcoming feel for public visitors. It feels like a park that belongs to the housing development only. The homes shown on the southwest side of the site block the Mississippi River views. This does not meet City Code Chapter 15 Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area Overlay District regarding public river corridor views. The development's housing density is too dense for this area, its topography and proximity to the river. The land is not suitable for a development of this type. Please reference the environmental assessment worksheet comments and feedback. For multiple reasons, this land is not suitable for this development or future residents. Whether it's the 37 daily trains per day or the railroad bridge that cannot accommodate emergency vehicles like fire trucks and/or moving vans and is downright dangerous for drivers in the winter, or the 3-story multifamily senior buildings alongside a railroad corridor
Bonnie,
and in a wetland area, or the addition of all the rooftops, roads, and other impervious surfaces with accompanying runoff. And now it appears that residents might be able to enjoy the additional sounds of dredging in the river. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. To me, that site is not conservation. Thank you.
What's that?
I'm just wondering if staff can
I'm
respond.
making some notes.
Oh,
I'm
I
going to
see.
actually have
Okay.
them.
Thank you.
Answer some of the comments that I've made, because the ones that I know that we are easy. Bill Estrom? Bill? Yeah. Sorry if I goofed you back.
New to this, first time coming up. Bill Enstrom, live at 7510 113th Street, next to the DNR property.
Yeah.
25-year Cottage Grove resident, kids went through school. As I see, things changing, the Anderson, so I've been driving that way the whole time. There's so many more volume. I just see, are people gonna get onto 61? There's thousands of more cars. Are we putting more overpasses? How are we, with the exception of the Pizza Ranch, quality of life topics here, it's like, I get it. The only people that really want a development down there are the future residents. Nobody in Cottage Grove wants more cars on the roundabouts or, and to take that pristine property and I looked at the development on, is it Hadley? They can't put windows on 2 sides of the houses because they're so close together, you would see your neighbor. If you look at it, it's crazy. And the density and the concentration, it blows me away. I lived in St. Paul and I moved out here for the quality of life. you know, and it's just, you're stacking houses and it just, you know, have you looked at where all these cars are gonna go from the warehouse and how they're gonna get on, you know, when the roundabout, I love the roundabouts, by the way.
So do I, by the way.
But you know, at a certain time of the day, it's tough. And where are they gonna go? So with this development with potentially 1,000 people, and if you don't think that impacts the environment, I mean, crazy. But I get it, you gotta make money. I'm, you know, a capitalist, so, but I just see these developments and there's one going behind the horse, you know, ranch, and then all the warehouse and stuff, and for the most part, it doesn't bug me, except for if we can't get to where we're going. You know, what are all the other things that support all this density, these, you know, where are all the other projects? How are people getting in and out? And you're gonna pump waste up the hill, I get that, you know, but it's like, I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
No, I appreciate it, and actually what I'll do is we'll actually answer that, because we do have the answers regarding what we're doing with traffic, and whether it's with regards to the project that's proposed here, or everything above the hill, frankly.
Isn't it bizarre, though, that you can't have windows on 2 sides of the house?
That is actually.
Look at it. It's so close that they're on top of each other.
I know.
I mean, you could get a skid loader to get rock behind there if you did, you know, from what I see, at least the ones on Hadley there.
Yeah,
and these ones, looking at that view, it's like, where do you throw a ball? Where do you have a garden? In the street. You gotta do it in the street.
But to your point, I'll just share that with you.
Yeah.
If you look at different areas of Cottage Grove, that particular area you're talking about, that design or those types of homes were built that way, as they are everywhere around the
I think it's
community.
crazy.
And some people, they must be
I love
buying them
St.
because
Paul.
they keep
I'm like,
building them.
I'm going out to God's country, you know?
Yeah,
Cottage
well,
Grove,
being down
so-
at 113th, that's good.
So anyways, thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, thank you. Now, was there anybody else that wants to speak? That was the people that signed up. So yeah, if any, or I know Mr. Hale, I think you're here too, and then we've got somebody else back there.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and council members, Rod Hale, 11701 Great Cloud Trail, Cottage Grove. I don't know much about development or how to develop property, but how you put 372 houses on 228 acres, that I don't know. And I don't know how people want to live today, whether or not they want to live in a single family, double family, if they want a townhouse, that I don't know. But you know, what I do know is that people love the river and the outdoor activity that it provides. And I just think we need more consideration for providing that opportunity to our people. You know, we learned that when we developed Moore's Park at the foot of the Great Cloud Landing Bridge, it's only about 100 feet of frontage for that park. But on any given day, that place is wild with people. Kayaking, canoeing, bird watching, picnicking, fishing, just a lovely place to go by as a resident of that area and see people who are just starving for river access and what it can provide. So we have about 12 plus miles of river frontage in Cottage Grove, and that 100 feet is all we've got. So I was really thankful and happy to hear that we're finally going to get some river access, that perhaps we can develop it for all people in Cottage Grove. We had 3 spots available at Moore's Park for people, and they parked every place. And as much as I don't know about the development, I do know that I'm not opposed to that. What I really am opposed to that is that it doesn't provide enough opportunity for the citizens of Cottage Grove to utilize the river. You know, I like the opportunity that a PUD Plan Unit Development offer provides, and always is in support of those, because it gave the developer an opportunity to be unique, come in and prove to the city that I can build a better development without all those restrictions and regulations that you have relative to just conventional development. But the other side of that was that the city now gets this opportunity to build into that PUD amenities that it thinks are in the best interest of our city. So it's a give and take. I don't see where we're getting much out of our share of it. So so when this proposal comes before us with 50 and 60 foot lots, I don't think we're getting a fair share for what we have in terms of parks. When the current homes in that area are fully developed, and if you've been down there on the 100th and Hadley and see the development that's going on in our city, there's going to be thousands of people within walking distance of the river. And when I look at that proposed plan, I don't see a lot of opportunity for people, even in the development, to share that river access. It's too small. Yeah, so we're going to get the acreage that's dedicated, I think 19, to the DNR. That's not active land. People walk there, yeah, they access it from the DNR entrance, but it's not land that's available for active recreation that a river affords. And then we've got, what, 19 acres for the county, I think, or something like that. And that land has got to be bought, along with the DNR land. We pay for that as taxpayers. Why should we have to pay for county land on this development? You know, we would have gotten more if we would have had a conventional development plan for the city, 10% set aside for parks and recreation. We would have had our acreage. And if you add up all of the land that is available, the 69 acres of wetlands and not trails, but wetlands and other land that's not available for either housing development or recreational use, that still isn't enough. That's 69 acres is just land that could not be developed anyway for the most part. We've got 12 acres or 13 acres dedicated to city parks. I'm telling you, that's just not enough. We need more. And how about Pulte planning to, before the last house is built, that Pulte has the engineers, they've got the architects, they've got the builders, they got the materials. How about they're providing a building or a pavilion type structure with restrooms and for benches, trails, whatever, that our Parks and Recreation people can suggest. The development is called Mississippi Landing. Well, let's build the landing part of the project, and let's build it before the last house is built. Pulte could probably build what I'm suggesting with materials from scrap of the project itself. So I'm just suggesting that you pause a little bit here and consider the fact that we're really trading more than we need to trade. We're in the driver's seat here. So let's get something that our city and our people that live in Cottage Grove can utilize. There's going to be thousands of people in that area. They can walk to that site. And let's make it appropriate for them when they get there that they have some activity and opportunity to utilize the river access itself. I know that there's, it's tough to make these decisions because you're working with staff and builders. But you know, I always thought, having worked on the council and commissions in Cottage Grove for a lifetime, that my job as a council member or a commission member was never to work, never see yourself as a proponent of supporting what the staff provides, as long as, and I know they're very competent and do a good job, or what a builder or applicant, wants. We work, you work, for the citizens of Cottage Grove. That's who you work for. And your only question ought to be, when something's presented, and I hate to lecture to you, Mayor, but the only question I think you need to ask yourself when something is presented to us like this project is this good for Cottage Grove? Will this make people in Cottage Grove really proud of their community? Does it really provide some avenue of satisfaction that is not provided already. And listen, we're on the river. Let's really build something that our people can enjoy. You know, the 13 acres we got, that makes a good parking lot, but it doesn't provide real good activity and access to the river, which I would suggest. So think about it carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And I saw one more person. Yes.
I was only anxious because I think my phone was down, and I was late because I couldn't get my printer to work. So if I may, off the clock, just offer a couple thoughts. I have my spiel down to 3 minutes exactly, but I wanted to take the opportunity to say hello to the Gustafsons, because I've never met them in person outside of maybe one masked meeting about a year ago. And I had an opportunity to work for Friends of the Mississippi River for a short time last year. I worked for them for about 7 months, during which time I believe the Gustafsons and myself and Whitney Clark had one Zoom meeting. And even at that late juncture, I want to say it was maybe in March of last year, the deal had already been done with the Pulte folks. At least that's what our understanding was. So I wanted to just say two things. One is, I have worked with private landowners my whole career and have a tremendous amount of respect for that relationship that you have with your property. It's sacred, it's sacrosanct, it's yours. And no one that I think that has spoken at any of these meetings, or people that are now part of a local group called Friends of Gray Cloud, have any interest or intent in interfering with your existing contractual arrangement with Pulte. I actually had a chance to correspond with Dave and Dawn earlier this week, and I
Ma'am?
apologize for not having a chance to get back to them.
Yeah, if you want to talk to him outside the council chambers, you can.
Yes, I will do that. Could I just add one more thing to that, though, which has been like a burn under my saddle?
No, because seriously, we need to.
Okay. All right, so I couldn't get my printer to work, so this is really tiny, so I apologize that I'm gonna have to look at my phone. Well, good evening, Mayor Bailey and council members. My name is Lisa Mueller, and my address is N5001 810th Street in Ellsworth, Wisconsin. My watershed address is Spring Creek, Trimble River, Mississippi River. My 40-acre farm is about 15 miles east and north of the Mississippi. When my kids were little, I used to read them a wonderful book called Jonathan James and the What If Monster. Whenever Jonathan finds himself in a new situation, he hears his what if monster asking him all kinds of questions to stop him from trying something new. What if it's scary? What if they laugh? What if it's hard? As Jonathan grows older, his questions change. What if they don't? What if it isn't? What then? Over the past year, a group of concerned citizens have repeatedly attended public meetings here in Cottage Grove to express their concerns about a development that is out of place in a landscape that begs to be protected due to its fragile soils, rare organisms, and location within a national park corridor. Through the EAW process, letters to the editor, articles in local newspapers, and public testimony at open forums, many concerns have been raised. These concerns include, and I'll talk really fast, an impact to endangered and threatened species on both the Gray Cloud SNA and former Mississippi Dunes property, water quality concerns relating to the contaminated aquifer under the land in question and its proximity to the nationally important Mississippi River. These concerns relate to wetland conservation, a dramatic increase in impermeable surfaces as a direct result of the dense development on the former golf course. These changes will inevitably lead to higher rates of soil erosion and surface runoff, all of which will flow directly into the Mississippi River. Number 3, loss of quality of life for the current residents on Gray Cloud Trail and in the area along the river in Cottage Grove because of increased traffic and crowding. And 4th, lack of respect for consideration of the significance of the Gray Cloud area to Indigenous peoples. I urge you tonight to ask yourself some tough questions. What if we worked with Pulte and the current landowners to locate an alternative building site that would not be so fraught with problems and opposition from local community members? What if we supported the local group now known as Friends of Gray Cloud and worked with them to develop a park plan that meets the needs of local, regional, and national visitors, because it will be nationally significant? What if we build a coalition of county, state, and federal funders, get the right people in the funding mix? And with all due respect to FMR, no, they weren't it in terms of being able to lead a funding campaign. And find a way to protect the Mississippi Dunes property and not destroy it. I'll close with a quote from one of my favorite senators and founder of Earth Day, Senator Gaylord Nelson of Wisconsin. The ultimate test of man's conscience may be his willingness to sacrifice something today for future generations whose words of thanks will not be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. So is there anybody else that would like to speak? Before I'm going to have some questions that I recall from the comments. So the first one, and I'll pitch it that way, and then if somebody over there, the rest of our staff want to answer it, that's fine. So there was a comment about the historic home. I took that as the first comment, and that it is considered historic and that it cannot be torn down. And I don't know if it, frankly, if you want to share what the facts are on that one?
Yeah, Mayor, Council. So we had our historic consultant, New History, do what I will call an evaluation, for lack of a better way to put it, on that particular, the site and the home, to get a very good detailed idea of the historic nature, the components of the home, and if it could be preserved as a historic property. Their determination was the alterations to the home at this point in time are significant, and therefore certainly would not push us towards preserving the home in its current state. That doesn't necessarily meet our historic preservation standards for preservation, for lack of a better way to put it. So we certainly wanted to make sure that we evaluated the property, like I said, in detail, to come to that determination before moving forward with any additional plans for that home or the site.
So Emily, real quick, so do you know, is it even considered historic?
It is not.
That's what I thought. And second of all, if I did see though in the packet, and I know it was a significantly large packet, as the council knows, one of the things that they said, when the building would be tore down, that we would take visual pictures or keep artifacts or whatever that might have some of the architectural features within that building. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor and Council. We always document those, they are historic properties.
Well, and I know we've done that in other historical properties around Cottage Grove that, matter of fact, the house that was where the Legends White Pine area, we did the exact same thing. Matter of fact, we kept some of the wood, and there's now some of the benches that are out for the seniors over there. So I do know that that's the case.
Well, I think we need to discuss that a little bit more, because I know we've looked at the house, and I don't think, we haven't really talked about it in historic preservation, so hopefully no decision has been made about that yet, in terms of the house.
Well, I do know that in the packet of info, the architecture, it's in there regarding historic preservation review of the house. So that's why I was checking. Thank you, Emily. There was a question about the process, and I know it was brought up, I think Emily, you did bring it up a little bit, but there was a comment about the comp plan amendment happening technically after the development, if you will. Do you want to, I don't know, Corey, if you want to speak to that? And then I'll plug in there was a comment about the 60-day period. So if you want to do both those are two that I thought would be good for you as an attorney to speak to.
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Honor. Actually, I was going to tie those together anyway. So the city has to comply with Minnesota Statute 1599, which is the 60-day rule. So when the city receives an application, which it did in this case on December 29th of 2021, and it reviews all of the information in it, and it determines whether or not it's complete. It was deemed complete on that date. It is true that the application was not consistent with the comp plan at the time. However, it is still a completed application because all of the elements that are required in our ordinances were submitted. And so at that point, we have no option to reject the application just because it isn't consistent with our comp plan, because the solution to that is to amend the comp plan, which is then the action that we undertook and we were planning to undertake, and actually, by a different statute, are required to undertake a change to our zoning regulations after we adopt a comp plan. It is guided transitional. That is not a final designation of anything being transitional. It needs to have a land use designation. So we knew that there was going to be an amendment to our comp plan eventually. This application then prompted that comp plan amendment. So we knew these applications had to come together, but we also have to comply with the 60-day rule, so we don't have the ability to say, nope, we're gonna reject your application, we're gonna process the comp plan amendment first. They submitted a completed application. We are obligated by law to act on that completed application within 60 days or extend it, which we did in this case, through, I believe it's April 28th is when the 60-day rule, or the 120-day rule now, will expire. If the council does not act on these applications within that time frame, they are by operation of law deemed approved. So you can choose not to act on them, that's fine. If they just sit there until after April 28th, they will be approved as they've been submitted. Not with any conditions on them. The city will not be able to impose any conditions. They will be deemed approved as they were submitted. So we are obligated to comply with the 60-day rule, which we are doing tonight. And the condition is that none of these approvals will be effectuated until Met Council approves our comp plan amendment. So we have satisfied and tied it all up and tied it all together as we're required to do by law.
So Corey, just as another comment on that, I know sometimes people are thinking, this is, it appears, and I can understand why, it might appear that it's the cart before the horse. What do other cities do? Because I know you're an attorney for many other cities.
I am, and this is what every other city does, is they tie these two amendments together, fully knowing that Met Council gets the final say on any comp plan amendment, but there's nothing you can do about that, because you can't submit it to Met Council until you've approved it. So you have to tie these applications together, but you just put a condition on it that it cannot be implemented, it cannot be effectuated and become effective until Met Council approves the comp plan amendment, so that those two documents, the comp plan map and the zoning map, are now consistent.
Okay, and then maybe there was one other one that was brought up that might be relevant to you. I think it was, I'll call him former council member Hale. He had commented about the parkland dedication, and he was talking a little bit about the comparison between a PUD and the park percentage. And I know there was a little bit in the packet of info that we received, but do you want to speak to that a little bit about where does that number come from, and would it be different if it was a PUD? And I'm talking about the percentage of park is what I'm specifically talking to versus what we're sitting at today.
Certainly, Your Honor, members of the council, there is an ordinance that we have, and there's state law on how much cities can request in parkland dedication when there's development. There must be a nexus between the development and the amount of parkland that the city needs. So in our case, the developer has met that obligation. When you do a PUD, sometimes there's some bargaining going on between things that the developer wants and what the city wants. And so there can be some give and take, but fully recognizing that the city can't ask for more than it is entitled to. And so it must be call it a fair fight, a fair bargain. If the city tries to impose too much on the developer, then they could, especially with parkland dedication, they could claim that that's a taking, and they would be right. The city has all of the cards in this equation because you have the right to say no if you can have findings of fact for denial. And so the developer knows that. It has to be a fair negotiation, and that's what I think this PUD that's being presented before you is. It was a fair negotiation. The developer gets some things that they requested. The city gets a little more parkland than it is entitled to under code. And so it feels like in this case, the PUD was the perfect tool to get everything that both parties needed out of it.
Okay, thank you. The other one, and this might be to Ryan, maybe, and maybe you can take two. I know there was a question by the gentleman in the back there about road access and where are we going to put, how are these cars going to get, whether it's down there or whether it's the North Point development or the homes that are down there, if you could share kind of what the bigger picture is of that entire area.
Yep, certainly, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So in terms of transportation planning for this area, the county did an extensive 2-year study for their Southwest Arterial Roadway project, and Emily mentioned it briefly. And that's the county's plan to provide an arterial roadway from Highway 61 at Innovation Road, following the 100th Street corridor down the hill, and eventually to Gray Cloud Island in their future regional park. This plan specifically is consistent with that, with the realignment of 103rd Street to be a more direct route and no longer that T intersection, which has some sightline issues. And then in terms as you go to the east, along 100th Street this year, there is going to be improvements to make that what we call a 3-lane section, turn lanes, center left turn lanes to work with the renewal project, which will be important. Also the North Point project. So that is being undertaken this summer. And as you go all the way to the east, we're working closely with the county for that second direct access to Highway 61. Right now it goes far down to the 3M entrance on Miller Road and then back to the north, so everyone uses Jamaica Avenue. Which, even though you have to wait some at peak times, it is an interchange with the US Highway. So it does have capacity. We discussed that in great detail. There were very extensive traffic studies done with the North Point project. But we still feel the second access is important. It's been accelerated on the county's plan. It's been added to their CIP, and we're working aggressively at grant applications, state and federal, to pay for that roadway project and that direct connection to Highway 61.
And I guess that also just for the public to be aware too, in both cases, well, technically, if you go all the way from Highway 61 all the way down to Gray Cloud, there's actually, in essence, there'll be 2 railroad bridges. One that would be part of the I'll call it the $21 million project, which is the down towards 3M. The other one would be fixing or replacing the existing 103rd Street bridge. And so just so the public is aware of that. The other, and you brought it up, but I just want to reiterate it again because I've said this before too. The long-range plan for Gray Cloud Island is a combination of a significant regional park, housing, and the road access that's being proposed would be large enough and extensive enough, I guess I'll just use that word, that would be able to take people from Highway 61, in essence, when this is finished, all the way down on a specific road through roundabouts and such, to eventually Gray Cloud Island with a significant regional park. So, and then the one other question, I think it was brought up, but it wasn't with that gentleman, I don't believe, but there was a comment, I think, by somebody that made about fire trucks and public safety being able to get under the bridge. I know we know that, but can you share, or I don't know who wants to share, because I think, oh, Pete, you're here. I'm sorry, I didn't see that I thought you had went away. Do you want to speak on the fire truck situation?
All of our fire vehicles except the ladders can make it underneath there, so ambulances can get underneath.
So the ambulance and all the fire trucks, but for that new big ladder. I'm sorry, the 2 ladder trucks, yep.
All other vehicles can.
Okay. Now, did I miss anything, Councilmember Olson? I was trying to catch.
You got a lot of it, but I have a couple too. And to Director Kerner's comment about the ladder truck, people need to keep in mind that we also have mutual aid agreements with all of the surrounding communities. So when we have trucks that aren't in service or they might be utilized differently, or in this situation can't get under the bridge, St. Paul Park and Newport will bring their apparatus to, serve that need at that particular time, and potentially even Woodbury if necessary, but they'd have to go the long way around. So those are all things that get talked about when we go through the technical planning on any kind of development, because clearly having a robust public safety response is a pretty important piece of any development. So I'm going to start with this. First of all, having been on the council now, this is year 11, I can't remember a more robust, a more in-depth process that I've been part of for, a proposed residential development. This thing has been looked at inside, outside, upside down, a lot of different iterations. And I want to compliment all the people who've done the heavy lifting on that, because it hasn't been us. We get to look at the somewhat finished product, but the developer, the property owner, the staff people, the consultants, everybody else. And in every instance when that occurs, the objective is, what is the best possible outcome for the residents of the city? I'm not going to speak for my council colleagues, although I think I could, but for me personally, that is the North Star, and always has been and always will be. I also know that I'm never going to make everybody happy all the time, and I always tell my wife that by the time I'm done doing this, everybody will hate me, because there's going to be something that I did or voted for that somebody's not going to like. I want to specifically address some of the things that Mr. Hale talked about. Mr. Hale is my former high school principal, former council member, has worked exhaustively to make this community what it is today. And there's not a man alive that I respect any more than Mr. Hale. You know, he's right up there with my dad and all those other people, because he's just a tremendous person. He cares deeply about this community, and he's always served as a mentor to me whenever I've had any challenges in my council tenure. He's always the guy that'll meet for breakfast and talk, and he and I had an opportunity to visit last Thursday a little bit about this, so his comments tonight don't come as any surprise to me. Based on that conversation last week, I asked our staff, and Jennifer, I'm going to ask you to respond if you don't mind, but I asked our staff specifically about the PUD question. And I know that, Corey, you addressed it from a legal perspective, but, you know, Jennifer, you've been intimately involved in these negotiations, and when this plan first came forward and we started master planning a year plus ago, one of the things this council voted unanimously on at that time was, I shouldn't say voted, came to consensus on, was we'd like to see about 40 acres of park space. Talk a little bit about where we are today, how we got there, and what the PUD allows and doesn't allow in terms of meeting that objective, please.
Well, Councilmember, I'll probably have Emily go back to the one image where she had the PUD up there, just so we could speak to the images specifically. As you stated, there's a lot of factors that come into play when a development happens. And, you know, when a developer looks at a parcel, you know, they can start to estimate, you know, what some of their densities will be. And usually then after they come to the city and they have their first conversation with us, we start talking about, well, we need 180 foot of right-of-way for this county arterial roadway. And the one option the county presented was right between the center of your property, which then, you know, kind of makes it a little more challenging to develop.
The look on Dave's face when he saw that plan the first time, I'll never forget it.
Right, and so then you say, well, the county did have this other option. And so when you look at the exhibit on the screen, you see a tremendous amount of green that is there. And that's a lot of right-of-way that, you know, when a developer looks at something at face value, they're not expecting that answer. So that's a tremendous amount of right-of-way. And then when we start to look at the county's design standards, the speed of the roadway, the radius of the curve, how the intersection spacing lines up, now we have to tell the developer, well, we need you to realign Gray Cloud Trail too. And now we need you to give us more right-of-way. And now I know we're creating two exemption pieces, which really don't have a lot of value for lots, but they do have value for stormwater for our future roadway construction. And so the developer, you can feel they're continuing to get, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there. And then we say, well, on the other side of the railroad bridge going up the hill, we need that right away too, because remember, that triangle is part of this plat as well. And then we know in the future, we're gonna need to reconstruct this, and there's a really large grade change. So we're gonna need a large permanent construction easement. And then just remember, this is the Mississippi River Trail Corridor. That's a national route. So we need to make sure we have enough land for that trail and enough offsetting factor. Then, as we've always been very committed to here in Cottage Grove, we like recreational trails. So we add a lot of recreational trails through the actual wetlands and open space and stuff like that for people to enjoy. That's all those red lines. That's in addition to all of the sidewalks that they actually have to build, one on each side of the road, which is shown in yellow. All of them connect to the scientific and natural area that the DNR has with over 237 acres. And then you look at the 14 acres of city park that will be active, because one of the key things I will remind you is when we heard the public, they wanted a passive, preserved, pristine area. So what are we doing? We're preserving a large percentage of the land for that pristine natural area. But there is something that the city council has been very committed to, and that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have said from the beginning that we want people of all abilities to have access to the river, to be able to enjoy it, to be able to enjoy the birds that Dave talked about, to be able to enjoy the sunsets, to be able to get down to the river and get into a kayak. These are the opportunities that this presents. Also, we have worked extensively with our partners. When the DNR first approached us, they said the most highest and valued land was actually that triangular piece, that 38 acres that Dave's actually actively negotiating with them. They said really the best thing that we want on this other piece is just this 12 acres because that's where there's some remnant prairie areas that they've been restoring with prescribed burns. So we've been working with the DNR to ensure that the trail segments here work with their prescribed burn schedules. So when we look at all of this, this comes together in a complete package, taking into account all of these different constraints. And the developer has to work within those constraints. I'm confident that this was not the ideal development when the developer first walked in the door. This has probably gone through 28 renditions to get to this point. And that's because we've heard feedback, we've taken comments, we've heard things from the public, we've responded. And that's what the developer has done. And that's really why we have a PUD to give us this flexibility. We've also said we want diversity of housing stock within our community. We want diverse products. We want people to have opportunities here in Cottage Grove. And the developer has worked with us and brought other partners to the table to provide that today. So that's kind of the big picture of where we sit in regards to the PUD.
And to piggyback on that a little bit, when we did the environmental worksheet, can you help me remember, was there anything in that worksheet with respect to endangered species that would have then caused us to do an environmental impact study?
There's nothing that would, as part of that, cause us to do an EIS. No, there was nothing there. But the developer is going to take the additional steps this spring to ensure that some of those species are not there. They'll actually evaluate and monitor. That's actually why they're delaying their schedule. They want to ensure that everything is done right and properly and that nothing is going to be impacted. And so they're taking those additional steps to make that assurance. And so I don't think the public recognizes that they're going the extra mile and doing their due diligence to ensure that there's nothing there that has to be mitigated.
And then the last thing I want to touch on with
Councilmember
this.
Olson, can I interject?
Go ahead,
though?
please.
Real quick though, before I just want to make sure it was clear. In that was like an 800-page thing that we read through. They did not identify any endangered species on the site. What they identified is there could be habitat, which is what I think Pulte is going to reassess and make sure that they're careful with that to verify that. So I just wanted to make sure that that was put out there. Okay.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, when I had coffee with Mr. Hale, I actually talked to him a little bit about that, and he made a comment that was really commonsensical that I just have never, I guess I never thought of it. And what he said was, any species in terms of habitat, they find the habitat that they need. And you've got the island out there and, there's a lot of other spaces. So if indeed there was a concern, I didn't see it in the EAW, but I wanted to just ask. So the last thing, and Corey, you touched on this a little bit, many years ago, I learned a dangerous phrase. And it's 2 words, and it's prescriptive taking. Prescriptive taking, which is something that our former city administrator had talked about with regard to when you're in a position as a city where a private property owner has a piece of property that you think you need for whatever the case might be, and I'm simplifying this down to my level, not yours, you certainly can vote to take the property. You can do that. But that comes with a lot of strings. Could you talk about that momentarily, please?
Certainly, Your Honor, Councilmember Olson, I think what you're talking about is what would be in litigation an inverse condemnation action.
Okay.
So you certainly can take more property, absolutely. But they will bring an inverse condemnation action saying you've taken my property without paying for it. And so there will be an appraisal, there will be commissioners' hearings, and there could be ultimately litigation in district court if they don't get the outcome that either side could appeal to the district court. So ultimately, you can't take more than you're entitled to by law. And so if the council wanted to take more parkland, then by all means, you can amend any of these actions before you tonight and say, we're gonna increase our percentage, we're gonna increase our acreage, and we're gonna add this additional property as parkland. You will then be looking at a way to try to pay for that parkland.
And/or any court fees, et cetera.
Exactly, exactly.
Yep, all of which is taxpayer money that, we are charged with protecting. So that's not something I want to do, but I just wanted to get your insight into what that action could look like. So I think what we're left with is we do have a PUD. We have a willing seller, a willing buyer. We have the ability to negotiate to the degree that we can with respect to as much park space as humanly possible along the river, which I think we all want, including the property owner. And when it's all said and done, the net acreage of that park, if everything goes to plan, will be what? Roughly 40 acres, which is what we started out asking for. So I think we get there. It's just a question of how we get there. And this process has been exhaustive and extensive, but ultimately I think we're going to land on what we had hoped to land on at the outset. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Thede, you said you had a question on
Yeah,
something?
just real quick. And as the liaison to the Historic Preservation Committee, I do recall talking about the property, the buildings, the barn is physically compromised, and so that understandably won't remain standing. But I seem to recall talking about different uses for the house and the possibilities, some different possibilities, and I trust that we will discuss that some more before any other decisions are made.
Yes, Councilmember, that's a great comment. This will be on the April agenda to talk about this. We will have new history present at that meeting as well. At the December ACHP meeting, we did talk about the subject property and the historical report completed by New History. As part of that conversation, we discussed how we could do preservation techniques, how to document what's on site, how to preserve that. And so we will talk about that prior to any kind of modifications or demolition on the site.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, now that you say that, you weren't on there as the liaison. That's why. Because when you said that, I was thinking, I know they talked about it, so when you said that, I was confused, so. Mr. Kumbata.
I have a question for Corey Land. Back to kind of follow up on a question that Councilmember Olson had raised, and that is, absent a sale or a substantial redevelopment of this property, which would trigger that statutory 10%, what amount of the land is the city entitled to in its current state as a no longer operating golf course?
Your Honor, Councilmember Kumbata, 0. It is privately owned. There's no public ownership in it at all.
So absent some sort of interest in the property, any development, any access to the river would be really us knocking on the owner's door, and, if and when they wanted to sell it, the city would have to pay full market value for the entire quantity of land that we were trying to gain access to. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So if there's no other questions by council, this has been such a kind of a long process, and what I'd like to do is I kind of did what I'll call a prepared statement that I wanted to read and just kind of go over some, I want to call it findings of fact. So I'll just start. So there has been a lot of discussion, both at staff level, city council, workshops, community engagement, more community workshops, planning, adjustments, updates, and give and take over the past year or so regarding the Mississippi Dunes Golf Course. There are a few items I would like to share with the citizens of Cottage Grove and my partners on the city council. Maybe some of you don't know some of this. The Mississippi Dunes Golf Course was never meant to be a park. The plan for this area was for housing. That is why we zoned it as transitional zoning. We wanted tighter controls over the type of development that would go there if the golf course ever sold. The one thing we said from the very beginning is whatever goes in here, it allows for a park with river access. The focus for Cottage Grove, Washington County, and the Metropolitan Council has always been having a regional park on the island, and that focus remains today. However, when this development proposal came before the staff and city council, we did instruct staff to see what we could do to preserve the land along the river, creating a Mississippi River boat access, walking trails, fishing piers, and access into the Mississippi Dunes Scientific Area. We discussed the size of the park, how the size of the park is compared to other parks in our community that are more of a city park versus a neighborhood park. We wanted this park to be more than a neighborhood park, which is exactly how it is being proposed. We had multiple commissions weigh in on the various aspects of the design. Many of the citizen advisory commissions walked the property to get a better feel of what was being proposed, and they saw for themselves the amount of land that we would retain along the river. There has been a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there about the purchasing of the property. The property was on the market for over 1 year after, I'll call it foreclosure. Any group or agency could have purchased it from the landowner. The Friends of the Mississippi, as we heard this evening, made a pitch but never showed up with the money. The city, just to be clear, the city did not go out and solicit a developer for this property. The city does not go out and solicit single-family developers. We have solicited some high-density apartment developers along with some affordable apartment opportunities and some senior living developments. However, we did not solicit the senior living developer who is part of this proposal. The landowner did not go out and solicit Pulte. Pulte contacted him with an idea and concept which has evolved to what is being shown to us today. I've heard from a specific group, the Friends of the Mississippi, that they had the money and were ready to buy. But when the time came to pony up the money, it was never there, or the strings that were being attached to the money were so severe, it would be of no benefit to the residents of Cottage Grove. But in any case, we have never seen any large sum of money to purchase the property in its entirety, and that was also reconfirmed this evening by the landowner. This group would state that they would come up with some money, but the brunt of the cost would be borne by the citizens and the taxpayers of Cottage Grove. The estimated amount needed to purchase the property, based on not current data, but older data, is $8 to $10 million, in that range. Just so the public is aware, that would add another $5 a month or $60 a year to the average $300,000 home in Cottage Grove. And that amount does not include any maintenance costs or the park we are currently proposing on this site, which is estimated to cost around $7 million. So let's talk about the total acreage. The total acreage below the tracks is 143.8 acres. Of that, 13.8 acres will be dedicated city park. We are working with Washington County to purchase the additional 19.9 acres along the river, and the DNR is planning to purchase 12.9 acres. There will be another 27.6 acres of ponds and open space with trails and green space throughout the rest of the property. And we will have protected the entire 2,300 feet of the shoreline. This all amounts to a total of 74.2 acres, which will be park and open space. That actually totals 51.5% of the total land being park and open space below the tracks. So you put that next to the 238 acres of the Mississippi Dunes Scientific Area, and at this time, as mentioned earlier by Mr. Gustafson, the landowner is currently negotiating with the DNR for the possible purchase of the additional 38.2 acres above the railroad tracks. This would add another 38.2 acres of natural prairie. This could end up being one of the largest groupings of parks and open space in our entire community. All the checks and balances regarding the ecological aspects of this site have been completed and will continue to be vetted over the next few months, as we just heard. No development will happen until the final environmental reviews are completed. That, along with the Metropolitan Council approval of the amendment to the comprehensive plan. But I would say, based on the current environmental assessment of the property and the current zoning being transitional, we expect that the development will be allowed to go forward, but in this particular case, it has to pass the test of the Met Council as well as the additional work that Pulte's going to do on their property. Lastly, I wanted to put into perspective some of the uses that were being proposed on this site in the last so many years that the council has said no. Because I think it's important for people to understand who has actually showed up at the city, and I've been in these meetings, so I know this is accurate. A large-scale hotel and convention center wants the property. A massive housing project all the way up to the river. WeFest was looking to relocate to Cottage Grove. The Renaissance Festival was looking to relocate to Cottage Grove. So if some people believe that this city council and the staff are not listening to the importance of this area in our community, you are wrong. We have been very clear in our goals and objectives over the years. I assume we are doing the right thing, as we heard in the last community-wide survey that over 90% of the citizens are happy with the direction that the city is going. So after many years of planning, reviews, citizen and commission input, we are here today with, in my opinion, is a fantastic development that will allow those who want to live near the river and have direct access to trails and open spaces will finally be able to do so. We will have a senior community project that will also have direct access to our parks and open spaces. Our community will finally have access into the Mississippi River, which has been long overdue in this community, in my opinion. I want to make sure and thank our staff and my colleagues for the many, many hours and nights and weekends that we have spent on creating a development in our community down here that I believe we can all be proud of. So that is just my statement for all of you guys on the council. And so unless council has any other questions or comments.
Mayor, I'm going to move that we adopt ordinance number 1053, approving a zoning amendment to rezone 228.09 acres from R1 rural residential to R4 low-density residential with PUD planned unit development.
All right, so I have a motion by Councilmember Olson, second by Councilmember Thiede. Any further discussion, council? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Who would like to take number 2?
I'll take number 2. I adopt resolution, motion to adopt resolution 2022-048, approving the site plan review for a residential development consisting of single-family lots, age-restricted units, and city parking area, and the preliminary plat for a subdivision to be called Mississippi Landing that will consist of 312 single-family lots, 8 twin home units, and a 52-unit senior living cooperative.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Dennis. Did I hear Councilmember Olson? So Councilmember Olson did a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor on this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So I thank you for the developers and Mr. Gustafson for working together with the city staff on this proposal. I know it's been a long and kind of arduous process, but I think we're at that point. I do know that there's some additional work that needs to be done, which I appreciate the fact that you guys are going to do that with some of the environmental stuff to make sure that there truly isn't anything down on that site. So I appreciate that.
Mayor Bailey, I need to speak to correct a factual error that I heard over the course of many months. And I think it's really important that everyone in this room understands what FMR is able to do and what other conservation organizations are able to do. Now, please hear me out, okay? FMR.
Mayor, can I call point of order, please?
Yes, point of order.
Point of order. We've had this discussion has gone on for months. We have voted and it's done. There is no more time. There is no rebuttal. This action has been taken. Thank you.
I understand that, and I'm not hoping to turn around your action.
No, but ma'am, I know you said you heard things, but I've sat in the meetings. So I'm just going to say that I know exactly what I heard. It was reiterated again when I just heard it from and I had not heard that, to be frank with you. I even made a note in my notes. So I'm just, yep.
Mayor, we can move to adjourn if you would like.
They were trying
Yeah.
To adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Councilmember
Second.
Olson,
Called- Call
second,
Director Kerner too to come up.
seconded by Councilmember Kambata. All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, we're adjourned.